All right, I think we're underway. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for this opportunity to talk to you. I guess my scope today will be a little bit narrower than Chris's. I've been asked to talk about what is changing in the maritime aerial surveillance, and there is quite a bit going on. So I'll get into that, specifically P8 and Triton, replacing the P3 capability, as the pictures allude to there. So what I'll cover really, the first bit very quickly, just a macro view of the Air 7000 project. I'll then go into the capabilities of the P8A and the Triton, and during that and also at the end I'll talk about what is the so what of that, what does that mean for the joint ops warfare space, both in the littoral and obviously before that, as Chris said, getting there through the ASW threat, through the surface warfare threat. So I'll talk a bit about that as well. So what's happening? We're about to receive our first Poseidon aircraft. It should be on the ground here in Canberra in mid-November. It's already through testing in the States, and I think we've got our third aircraft already in Seattle getting built. So we're getting 12 of those, and we'll have all 12 by 2020. The P3 down the bottom there is still going and going strongly. It's starting to be retired, but it's 40 years old, so it's like, you know, an old car. It's getting expensive to run, still safe, still doing a great job, but it's getting harder and harder to maintain and harder to keep the technology up to date as well. Phase 2C there is the first upgrade already planned for the P8A. It will be a rolling upgrade from when we get it. There'll always be software upgrades coming in, hardware updates, but that's the first major hardware update coming in the early 20s. And then Triton, indicatively, around the same time, yet to go through government, but certainly in the white paper that we will acquire Triton in the early 20s as well. The dashed lines I've got there, the red line is where we are right now, and the green line is about the end of 25. That's the period of transition for our Maritime Patrol Force in Air Force. So, and it's already underway with crews training, aircraft getting retired, etc. So it's a fairly long period of transition, and they're going to be pretty busy doing that as aircraft come in with new technologies. How do we use that in the best way? How do we work in the joint force and exploit those capabilities? Put this slide up. This is a US Navy slide, but we are also following this as well, in that the aircraft and the capabilities both are being designed as a family of systems. And really you could link this into other naval capabilities as well. But Triton gives you the long range and persistence, and I've got some more slides on that later on, which are quite, I think, very impressive. But complementary, working with response platforms such as the P8, but it could be a naval platform, it could be a ship, actually doing the effects on the water, on the ground, wherever you want to do it, but anti-submarine warfare, search and rescue. And I think this slide is quite useful to see the types of roles that both aircraft will do, and then some of the crossovers as well. Both contribute to the common operating picture, for example. But yeah, both very complementary platforms. And also add to this that systems will develop together. There'll be a lot of crossovers in some of the systems will be the same on the Triton and the P8 eventually. There's certainly work towards that as it moves forward. A lot of data on this slide of what's coming on the P8, but I'll just highlight three areas. And I expect you to read through all of that, and I'll talk more about this one, but the connectivity of the P8 will be a large leap forward in what the P3 has. So not new for Navy, but getting connected SATCOM via Inmarsat, enabling things like email access from the aircraft, being on chat networks, getting information to and from websites. That will be a large leap forward and speed the whole communications ability of the aircraft to get the information to the commanders in the Joint Task Group or wherever it needs to be. The other area down the bottom there, acoustics. The aircraft can process 4 times as many sonobuoys as the P3, and it also has a thing right down the bottom there in small black print, multi-static active coherent. That's where a very large body of water will be searched with sonobuoys with active signals going out, other sonobuoys picking them up, and this is my layman speak of multi-statics, but detecting submarines over large areas. And there's a lot of work going on in that area. and some good progress being made. But it's one of those areas that is seen as an area where we could leap ahead perhaps and get those submariners that really have the advantage in many areas in ASW, as a lot of you would know. Weapons up the top right there, so Mark 54 torpedo versus the Mark 46, a much more capable weapon, and we'll bring forward there. And Mark 54 Hawk is a high altitude, so it's a Mark 54 with a wing kit on it. That's coming about 2020, so will enable a standoff weapon delivery capability. And aircraft will come with a harpoon capability, but there's a growth path forward for the surface warfare weapon as well. And as I talk about all of this, we are very much, we are in a cooperative program with the US Navy, so that we see that as a great advantage, because as the US Navy progresses, we will progress and receive the same upgrades as they do. So we are not going this alone by any means. A bit more about communications. I may have covered some of this already, but you can see there are lots of radios. Link 16 versus Link 11, again coming up to the current era of communications. Inmarsat, and the idea is to connect the aircraft to our secret networks. US aircraft obviously connect to theirs, we want to connect to ours to get that chat, to get that email, to get that website access, so we can join the joint force together and speed the passage of information. And I've got an example of this, some words from one of our crews that is flying over there at the moment. I'll just go through a few slides looking at the aircraft systems. So first of all, the crew stations, state-of-the-art type of displays, lots of maps that you can overlay, lots of good human ergonomic type stations that are a large leap forward. From when I first started flying in the P3 in the late 80s to this is a massive leap forward. You walk on the aircraft, it is very clean inside. There's a tack rail with all the crew sitting down one side, the back-end crew. And there is very little hardware to be seen. It's all through the computer, just about. So it's very open and easy to access, and that's just, I guess, technology moving ahead. Acoustics I've already mentioned, so 4 times the amount of sonar buoys, GPS buoys will come, colour presentations, and that multi-static thing down the bottom as well. And the reports from our crews are that the acoustics is progressing very well. And for all of this, there's a good growth path forward. So as part of the cooperative program, we get to be part of the prioritisation of what's coming on the P8. We get a seat at the table. We're obviously not the major partner, but we are a partner in the progression of the P8. So we can see what is coming, and it's quite exciting. The radar is very capable. It will improve in future years, but has all that sort of ISAR, SAR capability, targeting ability, lots of contacts, and capable against submarines as well if the periscopes are up. Electro-optical, I won't talk too much about this, but again, a capable system, giving you infrared and electro-optic TV type coverage as well, with a zoom ability as well. Weapons and the search and rescue kit. Search and rescue is obviously a very important role for the Maritime Patrol Force, and there's one, I guess it is a combat role. If there's a combat search and rescue, you've got, an aircraft or a ship that goes down, you need to rescue the forces, so that's our reason for being, for search and rescue. But obviously over the years we have contributed a lot to the civilian deep or long search and rescue capability because of the legs of the aircraft. So that's an important area for us. The aircraft will come with interim kits, but by 2018 we're seeking to expand that and have a much more capable SAR kit. It wasn't originally a requirement in the US Navy, but I think after MH370 they probably realised that it is a good capability to have, noting the US also have the Coast Guard to deliver this type of capability, so, whereas we don't. Harpoon, as I mentioned, so 6 harpoons, and will progress in the 2020s. And the torpedoes as well, Mark 54 and the Hawk, as I've already mentioned. Okay, so just looking at ranges of the aircraft, it is increased on the P3, not significantly, probably by a couple of 100 miles, and in MH370 again out of RAF Pearce and WA. The P8s were involved in the US Navy a couple of years ago. They did go the furthest out of the aircraft, and there were lots of P3s, Hercules. The Chinese came down with their aircraft as well, so it was a real multinational MPA force operating there, as you probably saw in the news. But P8 went the furthest. So the range is not significantly more, but air-to-air refuelling is coming with the aircraft. It's already cleared on the KC-135 with the USAF. We will clear it on the KC-30 in the next several years. So that will blow these ranges way out there. And probably the limiting factor will be the crew on board, just the duration of how long you can go for. It does also transit faster, being a jet versus a turboprop, so that's another advantage over the P3. It will get on station quicker, and when you're on station, if you're retasked with ASW or surface warfare, as quite often happens, it will get there a lot quicker than the P3 can. So what's happening in the future with P8? Already mentioned air-to-air refuelling will come in the next couple of years. And these other ones are probably in the 2020 type timeframes, but much more increased network operations, moving from narrowband SATCOM to wideband. It will also link to weapons, controlling weapons through data links. Sensors will continue to improve and increase data fusion on board the aircraft and off board, linking in Triton, linking in other systems. So these are definitely improvements that will happen. Open systems architecture, I think it's been mentioned in previous presentations, the speed of acquisition is very slow generally. So this is a way of making the systems on board the aircraft open that if there's a new idea comes up about a sensor, it can rapidly be integrated on because it's an open system, and not necessarily by the OEM. It may be another company that bids and gets that system on board. And I've already mentioned the collaborative development with the Triton. As the years go forward, the two systems will become more and more merged in terms of systems, sensors, etc. And that's really a graphic example of what I was just talking about. So you can see now on the left, that's the aircraft we are acquiring, the increment 2. Looks a bit sparse, I guess, when you look at that, but really it's an indicative picture for what's coming in the next major increment in the 2020s, with a lot more connectivity, even though what we're getting is better than what we've got now, including weapon linkages, increasing that multi-static acoustic down the bottom there, the search field getting bigger and bigger after those submarines that are difficult to find. So what does that mean? I've just spruiked on about different sensors and capabilities of the aircraft. What does it mean for the joint fight, which is what really this seminar is all about. How do we improve the fight together, be it in the littoral or in the open ocean? So I think, first of all, it's a modern aircraft. The P3, as I said, has done a great job, but I think many in the audience would know the serviceability has not been fantastic over the previous years, although certainly they do their best. So we would expect serviceability to go up. However, we are buying less aircraft, so it probably balances a little bit there. Improve weapon and sensors, especially in the ASW area. That is the focus for the US Navy. They've told us that, and that's a good thing, I think, because that is a serious threat. For the crew themselves, improved integration of the systems on board. I've talked about the layout. You've seen quickly some of the stations and the feedback we have from, we've got a crew of instructors that are already qualified on the P8 and teaching our students and US Navy students in Jacksonville in Florida. And we sent some of our best people over there to do that and get 2 or 3 years up on the aircraft to come back and then be the core of our training squadron. So the feedback they're giving is that the aircraft is doing very well. Increased connectivity, I mentioned that. I think that will speed, not only for the crew, but for the forces they support, getting data off the aircraft, into our secure systems, directly to the units themselves, has to be better for warfighting. I think being common with the US Navy and having that future growth path will really bring some fantastic capability to come for P8. And overall, and I'll talk about Triton in a moment, but an overall enhanced ISR capability for the Joint Force. This was an example of that connectivity, and again, I know chat's nothing new for a lot of the people in the audience, but I guess this was direct from our people over there. So up in 9 chat rooms on board, multiple people on the crew, and also just being able to put an EOIR imagery straight onto a website or pull data off a website straight away. So for us, that's actually quite a large leap forward in the passage of information and the speed of it. So I think it's very good. And the situation awareness that brought the crew and the other users is quite a large increase in capability, or it should be. Next year, I should have mentioned at the start, you will see the P8 out there. It's going to have a year of OT&E going through all the different roles. So, and Navy is part of that OT&E, obviously, being a maritime asset. So those, you will see P8s out there flying around and trying to come up with, refined TTPs. How do we best use this capability? And also with Army, that's part of the OT&E plan as well. All right, I haven't got too much more to go. Certainly not as much as P8 for Triton. Because we're a bit further away, we don't know as much. It is still in test with the US Navy. They have 3 aircraft in Pax River doing developmental test. Progressing well, sensors are performing well, and the aircraft's going through envelope expansion. But I'll quickly cover the sensors. So what it has, the main sensors, obviously a radar for maritime surface search, optimised for that. Capable EOIR kit with full motion video, still imagery. ESM will be a major sensor to detect surface and land forces. And AIS for the merchant traffic as well. So on the left there you see the communication network. So again, wideband, this time wideband connectivity through SATCOM. Link 16, lots of radios, has a comms relay capability from radio to radio, so that will be no doubt very useful. In the middle are really enabling capabilities, navigation, sense and avoid radar, and on the right the sensors that I just mentioned. The crew, obviously a very new area for us in that the crew will sit in Adelaide and fly the aircraft, operate the sensors thousands of miles away from where it is, and I've got some range type ring slides in a moment, and there'll be multiple crews cycling through. To do one mission you'll probably need 2 or 3 crews at least to cycle through because of the duration of the aircraft. So what does Triton bring to the fight? Similar to what I said for the P8, I think the biggest thing with Triton, apart from the sensors on board, will be the sheer persistence and the range it will give. ISR sensors are very capable and again will get better and better and link into P8 growth. Comms relay will be useful, and again that US Navy growth path along with the P8. But speaking of persistence and range, this gives an idea, and I guess it's a little bit misleading because you look at that and you think P3 and P8, well that's almost as far as Triton, but that's from deployed airfields. Triton slide, which is the Triton range rings, which are the ones down the bottom there going near Heard Island and around, that's from Australian bases, and that's 10 hours duration on station. So that's one Triton. So, and I've got another one here. Now this may be a bit difficult, or perhaps not, but say for example from Pierce, that's 24-hour coverage with 3 Tritons. Right, so permanently, and this is a theoretical range ring, not taking into account territorial, other countries, etc., but it will give you 24 hours coverage at the edge of that ring from those airfields. And thinking about it, again, it's not the platforms that will be the limitation, it will be the amount of crews we have in Edinburgh that can physically, we only have a set number of crews that will be able to afford. That will be the limiting factor in how long you can do it. We'll be able to do this for a while, but certainly not 24 hours, 365 days a year. It will be a set period that you could do 24-hour operations. But that gives you an idea, and if we go to the HADR example, Fiji off to the right there from Amberley, certainly 3 Tritons could give you that 24-hour coverage feeding back into the Canberra, for example, feeding live imagery of the damaged areas, etc. So as the P3s did in Fiji Assist, but much more limited capability. So that to me is what Triton will give. The biggest advantage is that range and persistence. Last slide, just to finish, these were my thoughts on, okay, so what are some of the weaknesses, what are the strengths? I think I've talked about the strengths, and the other one will be building on, we work well together, MPA and Surface Forces, and also with Army after Afghanistan, building on those ConOps for these new capabilities. It won't be new, it will just build on what we already have. Probably weaknesses, I think, we talk a lot about networks. That is a weakness. When you look at the threat down the bottom, cyber network attack, if those networks go down, especially for Triton, the aircraft will still fly. You can still pre-program it to do certain things and collect, but you'll lose a lot of flexibility in the speed of getting that information. We'll have to wait till it lands to get it. And linked to that is remote crew. Fewer platforms, as I said, in a combat situation, we may well lose platforms. We will have less of them than we have currently and have had in years gone past, because they are getting more and more expensive. The P8 does also need more airfield. It's a very heavy 737 aircraft, so we are spending a lot of money upgrading our own airfields in Australia to take the P8 to use it to its full capacity. So that is somewhat of a weakness. There is some airfields just will not be able to fully use the P8 from. Opportunities, I think further improving task group and other joint force interaction. I've talked about the US Navy growth path. And the last one I'll mention is the old air threat, all right? So that's right back to World War I. It is still a player. It is, if you put these aircraft into a high air threat environment, be it from fighters or from a surface-to-air missiles, P8 has some defences, but they are not designed to go into that high threat zone. So that is definitely a threat to this capability and part of the whole joint force shaping considerations to take down that air threat or control it at least. All right, I think that's good timing. That's all I have. That's our first aircraft in Seattle a few weeks ago when the Chief went over and did the rollout. And as I said, the first one will be here in Canberra mid-November. You may see it at the airport, and then we'll get about one every 3 months after that to Adelaide and begin to roll out the fleet. So exciting times, lots of people training in the US, lots going on in the maritime air surveillance task. So I hope that's given you a bit of a very short and sharp overview of where we're going. Lots of change going on, but they're good things. All right.
Roger, what's the timetable for the potential acquisition of 3 extra P8s?
So that was mentioned in the white paper. So yet to go through government approval, apart from the fact it was mentioned there. So I would say 2020s. I can't be more specific than that, but not before early 2020s. Yeah.
Just pass it along if you could. Thank you. John McFarlane from ANU, actually. I'm interested in the balance of capability between the emerging P8s and other aircraft like that, and on the other hand, the improved capabilities of the submarines in silence, operating in silence and generally being able to evade detection. Where would you think, say in 10 years' time, with these capabilities coming on stream, would the balance lie? The advantage be with the Submariner, or the advantage be with the aircraft detection systems? And secondly, if you could just add to that, is it realistic that submarines will have an anti-aircraft missile capability within that time? Does that represent a really serious tactical threat?
Sure. I would hope that the advantage is with the airborne ASW asset, but and the submariners in the audience, very difficult to find a submarine at times. So obviously there's a lot of effort going into that, hence the multi-static work and some other technologies that I won't go into, but it's a classic case of move, counter-move to try and, overcome each other, I guess, and noting that the air from the submarine's point of view, is not the only threat. There's other submarines, the surface forces, etc. So I can't say who's going to be ahead. From personal experience at the moment, I would think the submarines are ahead. So that's why there's a lot of effort going into technology to try and push ahead with what we're getting. So the airborne threat, that's been around for a while. Certainly we used to consider that a submarine could surface its mast and fire a shoulder launch surface-to-air missile at an MPA. I guess it's still a threat. That, there's talk of floating. Submarine shoots out a buoy-launched container and it floats on the surface and fires a missile at the aircraft. I'm not aware of that technology in at the moment, but it's something to consider and keep an eye on, definitely. Yeah.
So, Mick Rosendale, you mentioned in your presentation that data links are a weakness, and of course they are if you need to control the aircraft. Have you found maintenance of those data links to be a problem? I know you don't have the capability yet, but... No. I mean, they're not new data links. We're Link 11 and Link 16, so I guess Link 16 is new for our particular force, but it's building on Link 11, so I'm probably not the best one to answer in the weaknesses of Link 16, but I guess there's a lot of effort going into those areas, but yeah.
Sir Jeff McGinley, question on workforce. Are you planning to reduce your current P3 workforce, your number of air crews to man the Triton, or are you getting extra workforce for the Triton?
Overall, our numbers are going down because not so much the air crews, but the maintenance personnel are reducing by about 50% because it is a modern aircraft. We will have the same number of P8 crews as we have now for P3s. Triton will be on top of that, so it is on top. It's not drawn from the same workforce.
So we could reasonably expect a similar rate of effort from the 12 aircraft that we have now from the P3s?
Yes.
You mentioned having to harden up runways. Does that apply to COCUS if we're going to have P8s out there? P3s are operating there at the moment. Yeah, no,
COCUS was definitely mentioned in the white paper this year, and there is a project to upgrade COCUS. It is coming in the next few years, and we are involved in that to enable P8 operations.
I hope they remember the motel rooms at the same time. They need upgrading.
It's a nice place. Yeah.
Last question.
So thanks for the presentation. Tony Johnston, Sigma Bravo, but I should declare my old status as Seahawk TACO. The off-board tertiary analysis sounds really good. Is there anything in the plan to upgrade perhaps the AJAC link there and the Navy Air Force cooperation?
There's not in our project. I'm not aware of anything in that area. Certainly data will still go to AJAC and also go to DGS Oz for processing, but I would think we would build on what's already there. For P8 though, we still have acoustic operators on board doing that first line analysis, so that will still happen. And I don't, when I say data gets transmitted, a lot of the analysis will still happen on the aircraft in the acoustic sense, I think, but being able to send information via emails, etc., will speed that whole process up. So, yeah.
To answer your question, Nathan's got a program underway to use AJAC's capability and invest in that as part of the future submarine, future crew program, which I know there's a conversation going on there about what those as a future priority needs to be.
Thanks, sir.
So thank you very much for your perspective on these matters, and there you go, that'll help.
Thank you very much.